They expected humans to offer help. Not a whole armada. Part 3. First contact. The hard-way Dominion commander Krivex stood in the center of his warship's bridge and stared at the sensor display. His thick green scales rippled with confusion. His yellow eyes narrowed as he read the data for the third time. Something was wrong. The numbers did not make sense. "Explain this," he growled at his tactical officer. "Where did these ships come from?" The tactical officer, a younger Varax named Sethix, kept his eyes down in proper submission. "Commander, the ships appeared at the edge of the system approximately 2 hours ago. They are not Korath vessels. Our database identifies them as human." "Human?" Krivex made a sound of disgust. "The soft ones? The pink creatures who build hospitals and give away food?" "Yes, Commander." Krivex laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. He had heard stories about humans. Everyone in the Dominion had. They were a young species, barely worth noticing. They had no great empire. They fought no great wars. They spent their time helping other species instead of conquering them. The Dominion's intelligence reports described them as weak, emotional, and dangerously naive. They were not a threat. They were a joke. "How many ships?" Krivex asked. Sethix swallowed nervously. "Approximately 900, Commander." The laughter died in Krivex's throat. 900? That is not possible. The humans do not have 900 warships in this entire region of space. The sensor data is confirmed. Commander, 900 vessels. 600 of them are combat ships. The rest are support and supply vessels. Krivex turned to look at the main display screen. In the distance, he could see the human fleet as tiny points of light. There were a lot of points, more than he had expected. But numbers did not tell the whole story. The Varax had 2,000 ships in this system alone. They had centuries of combat experience. They had the finest weapons in the galaxy. What did the humans have? Charity ships with guns attached? Hail them, Krivex ordered. Open a communication channel. The screen flickered and showed a human face. It was a female, Krivex noted. Small and fragile looking, with brown skin and dark eyes. She wore some kind of military uniform with metal symbols on the shoulders. She looked calm, too calm. "This is Dominion Commander Krivex," he announced. "You have entered territory claimed by the Varax Dominion. Identify yourself." The human spoke. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Coalition. We have come in response to a request for assistance from the Korath Collective." Krivex waved one clawed hand in dismissal. "The Korath are a conquered species. Their calls for help mean nothing. You have no treaty with them. You have no reason to be here. Leave now, and we will allow your fleet to depart unharmed. We have no quarrel with your kind." There was a pause. The human's expression did not change. "Commander Krivex, you are engaged in the active destruction of an entire species. You are killing civilians. You are burning cities. You are committing crimes that my people call genocide." "We are conquering weak prey," Krivex replied. "This is the natural order. The strong take from the weak. It has always been so. Not anymore." The human's voice was quiet but hard like metal. "You have exactly one chance to surrender unconditionally. Power down your weapons. Release all prisoners. Submit yourself and your officers to war crimes tribunals. If you refuse, we will destroy your fleet." Krivex stared at the screen. Then he laughed again, louder this time. The other Varax on the bridge joined him. The sound echoed off the metal walls. "You threatened the Dominion? With 900 ships against 2,000. Your species truly is as foolish as our intelligence reports claimed. Perhaps after we destroy your fleet, we will visit your homeworld. It will make a fine addition to our empire." The human's expression still did not change. "This offer expires in 60 seconds. Krevix opened his mouth to respond with more mockery. He never got the chance. The tactical officer screamed. Incoming. Multiple contacts. They are. Commander, they are faster than anything I have ever seen. Krevix turned to the sensor display. It was covered in red dots. Thousands of them. Moving toward the Dominion fleet at impossible speed. He had given no order to fire. The humans had launched first. They had launched before his mockery was even finished. All ships, raise shields, return fire, destroy them. But it was too late. The first human missiles hit the Dominion fleet like a hammer hitting glass. They did not explode on impact. They were too smart for that. Each missile split into smaller pieces, and each of those pieces split again. They targeted specific systems with surgical precision. Shield generators, weapon arrays, engine cores. Each strike was perfect. Each strike was deadly dot in the first. 14 seconds, 80 Dominion ships became expanding clouds of metal and fire. Krevix watched the destruction with wide eyes. This was not possible. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be naive charity workers who did not understand how the galaxy really worked. They were not supposed to fight like this. But they did. The human fleet advanced through the chaos like a single living creature. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly where to be and when. They did not waste shots. They did not make mistakes. They fought with the cold precision of a species that had been at war for its entire existence. Krevix finally understood. The humans had not been peaceful because they were weak. They had been peaceful because they chose to be. Because they had already learned everything there was to know about war. Because they had mastered destruction and then set it aside. Until someone made them pick it up again. Commander, Sefik shouted. We have lost 200 ships. 300. The humans are breaking through our formation. Krevix tried to give orders. He tried to rally his fleet. But the human assault was too fast, too overwhelming. Every tactic he attempted was countered before it could begin. Every formation he created was shattered within minutes. This was not a battle. This was an execution. On the main screen, the human admiral's face appeared again. She looked exactly the same as before. Calm, patient, unmoved by the destruction happening around her. Commander Krevix, she said, you have now lost 1/3 of your fleet. Surrender is still an option. My offer will not be extended again. Krevix stared at her. His scales had turned pale with fear. His hands were shaking. He had spent his entire life conquering the weak. He had never imagined what it would feel like to be the weak one. He opened his mouth to surrender. Before he could speak, a human missile struck his ship's bridge. The last thing Krevix saw was the flash of fire. The last thing he thought was that his intelligence reports had been very, very wrong. They expected humans to offer help. Not a whole Armada Part 2. The weight of overkill Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UEDC Unconditional and watched the stars through the forward windows. Behind her, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, preparing the fleet for what was coming. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of sensor equipment. But Chung could feel the tension in the air. Her people were ready for war. The Unconditional was the largest warship humanity had ever built. 12 kilometers long from front to back. Crew of 35,000. Enough weapons to crack open a small moon. Some politicians back on Earth had called it a waste of resources. Others had called it unnecessary. But Chun knew the truth. In a galaxy full of unknowns, there was no such thing as too much preparation. Commander James Okonkwo walked up beside her. He was her second in command, a tall man with dark skin and calm eyes. He had served with Chun for 15 years, through 3 major conflicts and more minor operations than either of them could count. He was the only person allowed to question her decisions openly on the bridge. "Admiral," he said, looking at the tactical display, "I have finished the final count. The Voraks have approximately 2,000 warships in Korath space. We have brought 900 vessels, including support ships." He paused. "Some might say we are slightly overprepared." Chun did not smile. "There is no such thing, Commander. The politicians will ask questions. This deployment costs more than most planetary budgets. Let them ask." Chun turned to face him. "James, these people sent us a message. They said their children were being taken from burning cities. They said their species was dying. And they asked humanity for help." She looked back at the stars. "We do not do this halfway." Okonkwo nodded slowly. He had known her answer before he asked the question. But it was his job to ask anyway. "The Korath ambassador seems confused by our response. She only asked for medical supplies and transport ships. I know what she asked for, but she did not know what she needed." Chun's voice was firm. "The Voraks are not here to raid a few colonies. They are here to wipe out an entire species. You cannot stop genocide with bandages and cargo ships." The main screen lit up with an incoming communication. The face of Ambassador Velith appeared, her alien features showing what Chun had learned to recognize as shock. The Korath looked like tall, thin creatures with smooth gray skin and large, dark eyes. They had 4 fingers on each hand and moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy. But right now, Velith looked like a person who had just seen something impossible. "Admiral Chun," the ambassador said, "we are grateful for your response. But I must confess that we did not expect this. We only requested supply ships, perhaps some medical frigates. This is what humanity sends when someone asks for help," Chun said simply. "Ambassador, I have read the reports about what the Voraks are doing to your colonies. I have seen the images of your burning cities. I know that they take no prisoners and show no mercy." She leaned forward slightly. "You called us. We answered. And we brought everything." Velith was silent for a moment. "But why? We have nothing to offer you. We cannot pay for this fleet. We cannot promise you trade or territory or resources. We are a dying species begging for scraps. Why would you spend so much to save strangers?" Chun thought about how to answer. It was a question humans sometimes asked themselves. Why did they feel such a strong need to help others? Why did the sight of suffering make them want to act, even when it cost them everything? Other species in the galaxy did not understand it. They saw human charity as weakness or foolishness or some kind of trick, but it was none of those things. "Ambassador," Chun said slowly, "humanity has spent most of its history fighting itself. We have burned our own cities. We have killed our own children. We have done terrible things to each other in the name of land and power and ideas. Our history is written in blood." She paused. "But we learned something from all that suffering. We learned that the worst thing in the universe is to cry for help and have nobody answer. We learned that evil wins when good people do nothing. We learned that if you have the power to save someone and you choose not to, you are part of the problem." Velith said nothing. Her large dark eyes stared at Chun through the screen. "So when we hear that children are dying, we come. When we hear that cities are burning, we come. When anyone, anywhere, calls out for help, we answer with everything we have. Not because we expect payment. Not because we want territory. But because we remember what it felt like to have nobody come for us." Chun straightened up. "The Voraks think they can destroy your people because nobody will stop them. They are about to learn that they were wrong." Behind her, the tactical display showed the human fleet moving into attack formation. 600 warships spreading out across Korath space like a steel net. Missile bays were loading. Shield generators were charging. Fighter squadrons were launching from carrier decks. 900 ships crewed by 2 million humans, all of them ready to fight and die for a species they had never met. In the corridors of the unconditional, soldiers checked their weapons and said quiet prayers to gods from a dozen different faiths. In the engineering sections, technicians ran final diagnostics on engines and power cores. In the medical bays, doctors prepared for the wounded that would soon arrive. They all knew what they were about to do. They all knew some of them would not survive. But they had answered the call anyway, because that was what humans did. Velith finally spoke again. Her voice was soft and filled with something Chun did not have a word for. Admiral, I do not fully understand your species, but I am beginning to think that the galaxy has underestimated you for a very long time. Chun allowed herself a small smile. Ambassador, you have no idea. She turned to her crew and raised her voice. All hands, battle stations. We have a job to do. The lights on the bridge shifted from white to red. Alarms sounded across the fleet, and 900 human ships began their advance toward the enemy. The Varax had come to destroy a helpless species. They had not expected to meet humanity. They were about to learn the difference. Ambassador Velith stood alone in the communication room of the Korath High Council station. Her four-fingered hands shook as she prepared the message that would change everything. Outside the large windows, the stars looked peaceful and calm. But Velith knew the truth. Death was coming for her people, and it was coming fast. The Korath were an old species. They had traveled among the stars for more than 10,000 years. They had built great cities on 100 worlds. They had created art and music and poetry that other species came from far away to see. But they had never been warriors. They had never needed to be. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that the Korath had forgotten how to fight. Now, that weakness would kill them all. The Varax Dominion had appeared at the edge of Korath space 6 months ago. At first, the Korath had tried to talk to them. They had offered trade and friendship. They had opened their arms in welcome. The Varax had responded with fire and death. Their warships numbered in the thousands. Their soldiers were bred for one purpose only: conquest. They did not want trade. They did not want friendship. They wanted everything the Korath had built, and they would kill every last Korath to take it. 12 colony worlds had already gone silent. Velith had seen the images before the communication stopped. Cities burning, families running through the streets, children crying for parents who would never come. The Varax did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. They simply erased everything in their path and moved on to the next world. The Korath fleet had tried to stop them. 47 old cruisers against 2,000 Varax warships. The battle had lasted less than an hour. Now only 23 Korath ships remained, hiding in the shadow of the homeworld, waiting for the end. The Council of Elders had debated for 6 days about what to do. Some wanted to surrender and beg for mercy. Others wanted to fight to the last breath. But one elder had suggested something different. Something desperate. Something that made Veliath's stomach turn with shame. They would ask the humans for help. Velith did not like humans. She had never met one in person, but she had heard the stories. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into their space age. They bred like insects and spread across the galaxy like a disease. They were loud and emotional and unpredictable. They fought wars among themselves for reasons that made no sense. They ate the flesh of other creatures and seemed to enjoy it. Some species called them dangerous. Others called them insane. But they were also known for something else. Humans helped people. It was strange and made no logical sense, but humans seemed to enjoy rescuing others from danger. They built medical stations that treated any species for free. They sent ships to save strangers from dying stars. They shared food with hungry worlds and asked for nothing in return. The other old species of the galaxy thought this was foolish. Velith agreed. But right now, she needed that foolishness. She typed the message carefully. She asked for humanitarian assistance, medical ships, food supplies, perhaps transport vessels to help evacuate refugees. She did not ask for warships. The humans had a military, she knew, but they were a young species. How strong could they really be? Besides, Velith did not want to owe humans a debt of blood. A debt of charity was shameful enough. She sent the message and waited. The response came in 11 minutes. Velith stared at the screen. 11 minutes. The message had to travel across hundreds of light years. The humans should have taken days just to receive it, let alone respond. Had they even read it properly? Had they understood what she was asking? The message was only 6 words. Message received. Hold position. Help is coming. Velith felt a strange mixture of hope and confusion. No negotiations? No questions about what the Karath could offer in return. No committees or debates or formal agreements. Just, help is coming? She reported to the Council of Elders. They shared her confusion, but decided to wait and see what the humans would send. Perhaps a few medical frigates. Perhaps some cargo ships with food and supplies. It would not save them, but it would help some of their people survive a little longer. 32 hours passed. Velith spent most of that time watching the sensor screens, looking for any sign of the Varax advance fleet. It would arrive within the week. The homeworld would fall shortly after. Everything the Korath had built over 10,000 years would end. Then the sensors detected something else. A ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Karath space. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 100. Velith ran to the observation deck, her heart pounding in her chest. Through the massive windows, she could see lights appearing in the darkness. Each light was a ship arriving, and they kept coming, more and more and more, until the stars themselves seemed to disappear behind a wall of metal and fire. These were not medical frigates. These were not cargo ships. These were warships. Velith had never seen anything like them. Massive vessels bristling with weapons. Sleek destroyers that moved in perfect formation. Carriers that released swarms of smaller fighters. And at the center of it all, a ship so large that Velith's mind could not fully accept what her eyes were seeing. It was like a moving mountain. A city in space. A weapon designed to break worlds. Her communication console beeped. An incoming message from the human fleet. This is Admiral Chun of United Earth Defense Coalition. We received your request for assistance. The voice was calm, almost casual. Where would you like us to start? Velith tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked at the sensor data and counted the ships. Then she counted again because the number could not be right. 600 warships. 300 support vessels. Enough firepower to fight a galactic war. She had asked for bandages, and the humans had sent an armada. Her assistant, a young Karath named Felis, stood beside her with his mouth hanging open. Ambassador, he whispered, what have we done? Velith did not answer. She could not answer. She simply stared at the fleet that filled the sky and tried to understand the species that had sent it. They had received a message from strangers asking for help. And in 32 hours, they had assembled enough military power to challenge an empire. What kind of species did such a thing? What kind of species could do such a thing? For the first time since the Varax had arrived, Velith felt something other than fear. She did not know if it was hope or terror. Perhaps it was both, because she was beginning to understand something important about humans. They were not just charitable fools who liked to help others. They were something else entirely. and the Varax Dominion had no idea what was coming for them. They expected humans to offer help. Not a whole Armada Part 4. The nature of humanity. The Battle of Korath Prime lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Varax Dominion fleet had been almost completely destroyed. Out of 2,000 warships that had come to conquer and kill, fewer than 200 escaped. The rest were scattered across space as fields of burning metal and drifting bodies. The Dominion's great army, the terror of a dozen conquered worlds, had been broken beyond repair. Human losses were surprisingly light. 23 ships disabled. 4 ships destroyed. Less than 3,000 dead out of 2 million who'd come to fight. It was a victory so complete that military historians would study it for centuries. But Admiral Sarah Chun did not feel like celebrating. She stood in the command center of a temporary base on the surface of Korath Prime. Around her, dozens of officers coordinated the massive operation that had begun the moment the last Varax ship fled. Maps covered the walls, showing the locations of destroyed cities and refugee camps. Communication screens displayed reports from 100 different locations. The fighting was over. The real work was just beginning. "Admiral," said Commander Akantuo, approaching with a datapad, "we have completed the initial survey. 12 Korath colony worlds were attacked. 7 have been completely destroyed. The other 5 have partial populations remaining. Total casualties are estimated at 40 million. Chun closed her eyes for a moment. 40 million people. Entire cities full of families, gone forever. And this was supposed to be a victory. What about the survivors? She asked. Approximately 15 million across all remaining worlds. Many are wounded. Most have lost their homes. Food and water supplies are critical in several locations. Okonkwo paused. "Admiral, we did not bring enough medical ships for this level of damage. Then we call for more." Chun's voice was firm. "Contact Earth. Tell them we need every hospital ship, every cargo vessel, every relief worker they can send. The fighting is done. Now we keep these people alive." Within hours, the same fleet that had destroyed the Varax Armada transformed into something else entirely. Warships became transports, carrying food and medicine to devastated colonies. Soldiers put down their weapons and picked up tools to clear rubble and build shelters. Doctors worked without sleep, treating thousands of wounded Korath in makeshift hospitals. And something else happened that Ambassador Velith had not expected. She walked through a medical tent on Korath Prime, observing the human doctors at work. The tent was filled with injured people. Most were Korath civilians, victims of the Varax attacks. But she also saw something that made her stop and stare. A human nurse was carefully treating the wounds of a Varax soldier. The soldier was one of the enemy, one of the invaders who had burned Korath cities and killed Korath children. He was strapped to the bed and guarded by armed humans. But the nurse treated his injuries with the same care she showed to everyone else. Her hands were gentle. Her face showed no hatred. Velith approached her. "I do not understand," she said. "This creature is an enemy. His people killed millions of mine. Why do you help him?" The nurse looked up. She was young, with tired eyes and bloodstains on her uniform. "Because he's wounded," she said simply. "And we're doctors. But he is evil. He deserves to die. Maybe." The nurse continued her work. "But that's not for me to decide. I save lives. Other people decide what happens after." Velith stood in silence, watching the nurse work. She had thought she understood humans after seeing their warships and their weapons. She had thought they were simply very good at violence. But now she realized that she had only seen half of the picture. Later that day, she found Admiral Chun in the command center. The human leader looked exhausted. Dark circles had formed under her eyes. and her uniform was wrinkled from days without proper sleep. But she was still working, still giving orders, still making sure the relief effort continued. "Admiral Chun," Velith said, "may I speak with you?" Chun nodded and led her to a quiet corner of the room. "I have been watching your people," Velith began. "I have seen them fight with terrible power, and I have seen them heal with impossible kindness. Even the enemy receives their care. I do not understand how the same species can do both things." Chun was quiet for a moment, thinking about her answer. "Ambassador, do you know why we fight so hard? Why we bring so many ships? Why we use such overwhelming force?" Velith shook her head. "Because we want to end it quickly. Every moment the battle continues, more people die. More cities burn. More children lose their parents." Chun's voice was heavy with old pain. "We learned a long time ago that the fastest way to save lives is to end the fighting as quickly as possible. Even if that means being brutal. Even if that means scaring our enemies into surrender." She looked out through a window at the ruined city beyond. "But we also learned something else. Victory means nothing if you become the monster you defeated. If we killed the wounded and executed the prisoners, we would be no better than the Varaks. So we fight with all our strength, and then we heal everyone we can, even our enemies." "It seems like a contradiction," Velith said. "Maybe it is. Humans are full of contradictions. We are capable of great cruelty and great kindness. We build weapons that can destroy worlds and medicines that can save millions. We are the most violent species in the galaxy, and also the most generous." Chun turned to face her. "We are not good, Ambassador. We are not evil. We are just human. And we are trying every day to be better than we were yesterday." Velith thought about this for a long time. She thought about the fleet that had appeared in the sky. She thought about the soldiers clearing rubble from destroyed homes. She thought about the nurse treating an enemy's wounds. "Admiral," she said finally, "I think I am beginning to understand your species. And I think the galaxy has been very wrong about you for a very long time." Chun smiled, but there was sadness in it. "We've been wrong about ourselves too, Ambassador. Many times. But we keep trying." Outside, human soldiers and Korath survivors worked side by side to rebuild a city that had nearly been destroyed. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It looked like hope. It felt like a new beginning. And somewhere in space, the survivors of the Varaks fleet were carrying a warning back to their empire. God, do not touch the humans. Do not threaten their friends. Because if you do, they will come for you with the fury of a species that has learned the true cost of war. And they will not stop until the fighting is over and the healing can begin. They expected humans to offer help. Not a whole Armada Part 5. A message to the Galaxy 3. Months had passed since the Battle of Korath Prime. The rebuilding was going well. Human engineers had helped construct temporary housing for millions of displaced Korath. Human doctors had treated over 200,000 wounded survivors. Human cargo ships had delivered enough food and medicine to last for years. The Korath Collective was not healed, not yet. The scars would take generations to fade. But they would survive. They would rebuild. They would live. And they would never forget who had saved them. Ambassador Velith stood in the grand hall of the Korath High Council, surrounded by the surviving elders of her species. The hall was ancient, built more than 8,000 years ago by ancestors who had dreamed of a peaceful future among the stars. The war had damaged parts of it, but the central chamber remained intact. Columns of white stone rose toward a ceiling painted with images of distant galaxies. Light streamed through windows of colored glass. It was beautiful. It was home. Today, the hall was filled with a mixture of Korath officials and human diplomats. Admiral Chun was there, wearing a formal uniform instead of her battle armor. Beside her stood representatives from Earth's government, military, and civilian agencies. They had come to celebrate the end of the crisis and to discuss the future relationship between humans and Korath. But first, there was something Velith needed to say. She walked to the central platform and raised her hands for silence. The murmuring crowd grew quiet. 3 months ago, Velith began, our species faced extinction. The Varax had come to destroy us. We had no army that could stop them. We had no allies who would help us. We were alone, waiting for the end. She paused, looking at the human delegation. Then we sent a message. A simple request for aid. We asked for medical supplies and transport ships. We hoped that someone might offer us a few scraps of kindness before we died. The hall was completely silent now. Every eye was focused on her. We did not expect what came next. We did not expect 600 warships. We did not expect an army of 2 million humans crossing the galaxy to save strangers they had never met. We did not expect to survive. Velith's voice grew stronger. But the humans did not just save our bodies. They could have come, destroyed the Varax, and left. They could have demanded payment, or territory, or submission. They could have made us their subjects instead of their friends. That is what other species would have done. That is what the Varax would have done. She shook her head slowly. Instead, the humans stayed. They rebuilt our cities. They healed our wounded. They fed our hungry. They asked for nothing in return except our friendship. And when I asked Admiral Chun why, she told me something I will never forget. Velith turned to look directly at Chun. She said that humans know what it feels like to suffer. They know what it feels like to cry for help and have nobody answer. They have done terrible things to each other throughout their history, and they have learned from those mistakes. So when someone calls for help, they answer with everything they have. Because they remember. Because they care. Because they refuse to let anyone else feel that loneliness. Velith raised her voice to fill the entire hall. The galaxy has misunderstood humanity for too long. Other species have called them young and foolish and weak. But I have seen the truth. Humans are none of those things. They are a species that has looked into the darkest parts of their own nature and chosen to be better. They are a species that fights with terrible power so that they can heal with boundless compassion. They are the most frightening warriors I have ever seen, and also the kindest souls. She turned back to face the assembly. Today, the Korath Collective formally pledges eternal friendship with the people of Earth. Our history will record what they did for us. Our children will learn their names. And if the humans ever need our help, we will answer their call, just as they answered ours. The hall erupted in applause. Korath and humans embraced each other. Old diplomats cried tears of joy. Young soldiers exchanged stories and laughter. For this one moment, 2 species that had been strangers were now family. But the story did not end there. 1 week later, a message was broadcast across every major communication network in the galaxy. It traveled to 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 stations. It reached the oldest empires and the youngest colonies. Every species with the technology to receive it heard the same words. The message was simple. It came from Earth, and it changed everything. To all species of the known galaxy, the human race formally offers the following promise. If your people face extinction, if your worlds burn, if your children cry out for help, call us. We will come. We do not require treaties. We do not demand payment. We do not ask you to submit or serve or surrender your freedom. We ask only one thing. Remember what we do for you. And someday, when another species calls for help, answer as we have answered. Help as we have helped. Care as we have cared. The galaxy is vast and often cruel. Species rise and fall like waves on an endless ocean. But no one needs to face the darkness alone. No one needs to die without someone fighting for them. There is no evil so great that it cannot be met with overwhelming force. There is no suffering so deep that it cannot be met with unreasonable compassion. This is our promise. This is our gift. This is who we are. Call us, and we will come. Signed, Humanity. The message spread through the galaxy like fire. Some species read it with hope. Others read it with fear. The Varax Dominion read it with the cold knowledge that they would never attack human-protected space again. In the Korath Collective, the message was carved into stone and placed at the center of every major city. Monuments were built to honor the humans who had saved them. A new holiday was created to celebrate the day the fleet arrived, and across the galaxy, species that had never spoken to humans began to look at the stars with different eyes. There was something out there now, something powerful and strange and impossible to fully understand. A species that would cross the galaxy to save strangers. A species that would destroy armies and then heal the wounded. A species that wanted nothing except to help. In the years that followed, the calls for help grew more frequent. And every time, humanity answered. They saved colonies from natural disasters. They fought off pirates and raiders. They delivered medicine to plague-stricken worlds. They never asked for payment. They never asked for thanks. They simply showed up, did what needed to be done, and left. And slowly, the galaxy began to change. Species that had fought each other for centuries started talking instead. Empires that had conquered the weak began offering protection instead. The idea spread like a virus of kindness. When someone asked for help, you helped them. No conditions. No negotiations. Just help. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more powerful. They had taught it how to care. And somewhere on Earth, in a small house in a small town, a child looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. Her parents had told her stories about the great fleet that had saved the Korath. They had told her about Admiral Chun and Ambassador Velith, and all the others who had risked everything for strangers. The child smiled and made a wish. She wished that someday she could help someone to. And in that moment, she became exactly what humanity had always been. Hope.